Alright, hello and welcome back to another tier making list. Who says I play video games anymore? I just make lists of things that are video games. Why not? And today we're going to be looking at magic. Again, Mork was kind enough to do all this. I don't know, it looks detailed and intensive, and I don't know anything about coding, so I'm happy that he's making these for us to do these with. So today we're going to try to look at the Order Warbands magic, and then maybe the Destruction Warband magic, which kind of doesn't leave much left. I would say we've been talking on the forums, like maybe just literally the units themselves, just ranking the units in strength and the builds you can make, which would probably be a very intense kind of video because there's so many different ways you can kind of make builds. But this one could be that way too, because you're going to look at the magics and how they fit into a build. And the first one here I have up is the Warlock, which is kind of a unique character in his own right, because he's not considered a there's Zinch or like destruction magic, and I guess order magic. He's in the Order Warbands, but he's a destruction Zinch kind of curse unit, which is very bizarre. So there's some spells like Idol of Change, where if you stand in it, it's harder to cast devotion spells, but it's easier to cast destruction magic, and he gets to use that, but he can't use it unless your opponent like kind of puts it down for you. So and in that regard, he's like definitely more offensive. He only does debuffs in offensive magic, where the other schools do a lot of buffs. They have a little bit of offensive magic with the other three units you will see, but they're mostly all about buffs. Well, this guy is all about debuffs. And he's got some of the best spells in the game by far. It's unique to have something that's offensive and does debuffs in the middle of order, which alone is crazy. And then it allows him to use a staff, which is a very powerful weapon. It's a destruction kind of weapon that he gets to use, which increases spell range by 6 meters, which is significant. You can also see it gives plus 10 initiative, so it makes you as fast as possible. I mean, the parry is ridiculous as well. Plus 30% parry. You basically get a shield. So it's an amazing weapon for any caster. Everything on it's good. It even does a decent amount of damage, 60 on average. So you kind of have to mention that while talking about this, I feel like. He's arcane. I guess that's arcane caster. Zinch curses. So he takes a different... They are different between the order kind of... Is it an order caster? Let's just look. Divine caster. What we're going to call it. So different set of curses. So he has the staff, and then we need to talk about, I think, his active skill, just to mention it. Again, this is kind of something separate, but he can ignore 50% of magic resistance. So he has a really good chance of landing his spells when he casts them. The one he starts with is Scavenger's Curse. A lot of these units start with spells that aren't amazing. I mean, that's not quite fair. It's a mixed bag. But I would say Scavenger's Curse is on the top end of spells you would want to start with. It's useful right out the door. So target gets an initiative penalty of -10. When the target interacts with something, it applies a debuff. I mean, that part is a lot more awkward, especially in PvE. But what you're looking at is the initiative penalty. And then for the mastery, initiative penalty increases to 30. And these resistances do increase to 30%, which is really significant. If you're playing a PvP and people do have to loot things, like that's a massive... You might not even think about it. You're like, oh, fuck, I forgot that was on there. So, like, these are decent debuffs, but we're not even going to really look at that. What you're looking at is this, it decreases initiative. The other thing, it's easy to master. I have no idea why it's easy to master. I don't understand that on any level because it's so good. The range, I get very confused about the range on some of these. It says the range is 15 meters. I don't know if it just stays at 15 meters. See, it must just stay at 15 because it usually says if it changes. The mod changes a lot of the range distances. But since it's only 2 OP, you have a very good casting chance and a really low curse chance. You can see it's only 5%. So you can throw a few of these out. And so it's basically, we talked about ballistic skills. And I think on God tier, I had Mastery Knee Shot. God tier. This is the magic version of Knee Shot. So what do you think it's going to be? I mean, it's crazy what you can do with minus 30 initiative. It can be a death sentence for 2 OP. You just cast this on a target that you're targeting, usually an impressive, a demon, some dangerous target, and you've just given them a death sentence. The other thing is it clearly stacks. So there is Knee Shot, which is the range version. Then there's Staggering Blow, which is the melee version. And then this is the only really truly ranged or magic version of initiative manipulation. There are a couple others in theory. There's, for example, the Idol of Pestilence, which can guarantee drop your initiative some. I think by 4. But like this is a guaranteed single target from range, as we've just discussed, initiative dropping skill. And right off the bat, you can get good use out of it. Like I said, basic, if you're coming out onto the field and you can drop someone by 10, you can get them killed, which is big early levels. Like getting two turning somebody when everything's just RNG and the hits are so big relative to HP pools, that's very good. I would say it's for a starting spell, I wouldn't say it's great. It's only 10, but it's really good. And then I would say, yeah, it is godly. Like, if the Knee Shot's godly, I don't know why the ranged magic version wouldn't be. It's easy to master, for fuck's sake. You would never not use this. You would use this every single battle. You'd go out there, you'd find a target, and you would reduce its initiative by 30, and your warband would kill it. PvP, PvE, this will constantly get used. And it will lead to things dying, and your unit's not dying. So it's godly. It's crazy good. And this is his starting spell. So right off the bat, the Warlock's coming out with a great spell. And it only gets better from there. I think Blinding Light in vanilla, this was the starting spell. It reduces the following chances by 5% for 2 turns. It's interesting. This says it lasts 3 turns too, by the way, instead of the 2 turn, 3 turn. So that's just another reason it's really good. I don't know why it's not 2 turn, 3 turn like most things in the mod. But Blinding Light reduces your chances by 5% for 2 turns. It's melee hit, ranged hit, dodge, parry, perception, and spellcasting. And then the duration increases to 10% for 3 turns. And then you get 30 meters rate. For some reason, he has the mastery go up. So, and, oh, this one, okay, it does say here. So that's even better. So in the mod, the mastery spells are supposed to be reduced in casting. Like the comments, you have to be, the range is reduced, the basic is further. But for some reason for debuffs, he's flipped it. So the masteries are even better, which I think is a mistake. So you can safely from 46 meters away, maybe even longer, I don't know, from across the map, easily 46. Like if you take Blinding Light, I want to say reach, right? This is just insane to me. Is it improved casting? No, the other one. He's taking that anyway, but expert casting. Yeah, 10. You put on the staff, you're at 46. There's a reach. You can be at 52 meters if you put the reach thing on your helmet. Okay. No, 52. Sorry. 52 meters. 52 meters away. You can just apply Scavenger's Curse or Blinding. I can't get over it. All right, so Blinding Light from 52 meters away. You can reduce spellcasting chance by 10%. That's really what you're looking for. So you can just shit on any kind of caster. It's like a ranged Jaw Strike. It's crazy. Not as strong as Jaw Strike, as it shouldn't be because it has the other debuffs. Jaw Strike, of course, reducing your casting chance, which you can look at. See, this is 15 and then 30. So again, it's not nearly as good. Casting chance will be by 15%. So it's kind of like a basic Jaw Strike. But what you're really also looking at, which is good. I mean, that's like good. If you could just from 52 meters away, just throw that on somebody. But what this is really used for, and what he can really do, is a melee resist Warlock is a thing. And reducing the hit chance by 10% is pretty decent. You can also reduce ranged hit chance by 10%, which isn't nothing. But it's really reducing melee hit chance and spellcasting chance by 10% is what you would take Blinding Light for. Now, I would say it's got less of a use window. So, again, the basic having shorter range than the mastery is blowing my mind. Doesn't really make any sense to me. It's kind of awful, to be quite honest. The fact that you have to get closer to have 5% is, you're not taking that. I don't even think you would stack it. It's just so low, the 5%. Yeah, you'd almost say horrendous, honestly. But we can say awful because you could technically stack it. But then this one with a melee resistance build, I would say is elite to great. There's not many spells that reduce melee, that help with melee hit, right? So a lot of them are buffs. There's Divine Revelation. The Wolf Priest has one. The Warrior Priest has like Deny the Heretic. There's a few things. And it's funny because these are all like on that side of they're all divine casters. So if you bring one of those casters kind of into with the Warlock, you can stack things. The Wolf Priest, the Warrior Priest, for example. So that's where this Blinding Light becomes even stronger. But then there's not too many that really like it's a ranged debuff that like reduces your hit chance for magic, which I can't really think of any. I'm just waking up, but like, is there a debuff that reduces hit chance? I think maybe some of the clouds, right? Maybe there's a cloud, but that's like an area of effect. So this is a very unique spell. And then you consider the fact that it also has the spell casting reduction. I mean, it's elite. It's a godly again, honestly. Like if you're making a melee resist warband or a melee resist warlock, like this is, you just take this and you just spam it around the map. And it's an explosion. It's everyone within 5 meters. So it's not even a single target. You can get a couple units with it. What you're really looking for is the impressive, the demons, the damage dealer, and you're throwing it out onto them. And the fact that you can do this safely from 52 meters away is just kind of mind-blowing to me. So again, it's only 2 OP, it's easy to train, not easy to master, but like you get it at 9 intelligence. You get it very early, and it will give you dividends. In a melee resistance build team in Warlock, that's like the one thing that kind of keeps it back a little. But for what it does, it's really unique and powerful. So I don't know how else to say it. There's nothing else that reduces all those things at once. And then it just keeps getting better. For the Warlock, you have Curse of Rust, which reduces armor absorption by 15% for 2 turns. And then it can't stack. And then reduces it by 20% for 3 turns. Range increases to 52 meters. Holy shit again. And it's only 2 OP. Like, his spellbook is just insane. So this is the second best armor reduction spell in the game. And armor reduction, in my opinion, is the strongest tool in the game. So this is the second best thing in the game, in my opinion. The strongest would be Weapons of Destruction. It does the same armor bypass, but it's a buff, so it's easier to like control. You just put it on the units you want, and they have it actively. Where Curse of Rust is a debuff, so it has to get through magic resistance, right? So that's the big distinction, I would say. Both are 2 OP, so in that sense they're equal, the same bypass. But again, a buff is slightly easier to do than a debuff, which makes it a little better. The caveat is you can have 2 Warlocks and only 1 Magister. So in a sense, you can almost say they're tied in power and strength. But this is a ridiculously strong spell. There is Sorcerer's Curse for the Skaven. It's 3 OP. And the difference between 2 OP and 3 OP is the difference in casting chance and how many of them I can spam. You can see the Tzeentch Curse chance goes up 5%. So just casting it twice, you already have 10% more curse chances. So you're eating more curse. You literally just are mathematically. And you're casting it less. So Curse of Rust, you can just spam out upon the battlefield. And so this gives mercenaries a way to bypass armor. And I've discussed like how strong mercenaries are in this mod. They can kind of do everything. We're talking about this Warlock who has the best magic in the game, in my opinion. These spells, the spellbook's insane. And then they have the best archer in the game, the marksman. And then all kinds of other units that can be ranged. And then you consider they have like an ogre and whatnot. And then their weapons. They have the crossbows, which can pierce right through armor. Crossbows of perforation. And then you have axes and great axes. They also have spears if you don't want the armor bypass because you're getting the Curse of, you can then start to bypass stances instead. Like their tools are just actually insane what they can do. Hey, Para, you didn't miss too much. So then you have the Curse of Rust, which then for the whole team is giving them all even more armor bypass. So the mercs are getting their insane amount of armor bypass by taking this spell, if you consider their axes. And then they also have units that can easily get to 15 accuracy and still be effective units. The number 1 and 2 being the Ogre, which Mork is using Mastery Armor Break on his Ogre. He's used it, I think, every time I've ever seen him build an Ogre. It's really easy to do. And then the other one is the Champion. He actually gets 15 accuracy and 15 weapon skill, which is, so he's a very good can opener. So if you consider the Warband has great axes, has units that can actually land armor breaks relatively without missing constantly. And then you toss in the Curse of Rust, which is only 2 OP. It can be spammed across from 52 meters away. It's just kind of insane. And to be honest, the basic is pretty effective. You're getting 75% of the mastery. Now, if you're using Curse of Rust, you're targeting that unit down, that turn. You're not like using it to wait for 3 turns. You're going to target the unit down. So I would say this one's elite, and this one's just godly. I mean, 5% is 5% more. But if you just have 2, since you already took Easy to Master Scavenger's Curse, for example, you can take this for 4 magic, and then this for 2. And you've just walked out with Mastery Knee Shot, which we said was God tier. And you're walking out with 15%, like basically armor break, a ranged armor break that costs 2 OP instead of 3. And you can do from 52 meters away. All for like 1 spell. Like, it's actually nuts. You did miss a bit of that. I talked about the ranged, and I can't figure out why the masteries have more range than the basic. I don't understand that. I thought the rule was supposed to be basic has farther range and then mastery has less. But in this case, all of the insane debuffs he gets have 52 meters range, which is just crazy to me. If you just want to totally shit on somebody, you take 2 warlocks and you are taking 35% of the armor away. I mean, this is just so much better than armor break because it's cheaper, it's ranged, and it's just nothing else kind of competes with it. It kind of blows my mind. It's only 2 OP. Um, so that's Curse of Rust. So far, I would say the Warlock's doing pretty good. Dispel. Let's see if we can bring these up a little. So Dispel removes all active spell effects. Does not like 2 or 3 like an elixir. All. Does not affect Zeech, Curse, Divine Wrath effects, nor item enchantments. So it's basically just saying spell. If you look on the buff list, it'll say magic next to it, and that's what that means. Radius increases to 10 meters, range to 20, easy to master again. Again, he's got 2 easy to master spells in his spell book. I'm not sure why. So Dispel in a PvE battlefield, it's not good. You're just not using it. The AI doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. To be fair, sometimes they do put buffs on their units, and it could have some use. But in PvP, this just stops any order warband kind of in its tracks. You could say the Skaven too. Well, you could say the Skaven have the Bless with Filth, Weapons of Destruction, Call of Van Hell. So really, honestly, any warband, to be fair. But like Order especially likes the buff. But then so does Weapons of Destruction and Call of Van Hell. Just stripping those off is just insanely strong. I mean, I'm glad it's been changed. The around the caster was kind of rough, but like this is again just really good. So I think he's saying for Dispel, the effect is exactly the same. That's why it's easy to master. But the radius doesn't increase and the range increases. Those are significant. Like 10 meters is a lot. Doubling the size of the circle and then the range you can toss it, I think are pretty good buffs that don't necessarily mean it has to be easy to master. The fact that it is easy to master, I mean, again, it's godly because of what it can do. And I would say even that one again is elite. It's the same principle that we just talked about here. You take Scavenger's Curse, which you start with for 2 spell points. You've now already mastered it, and you're level 2. I don't know. You're rank 2, and you have mastery knee shot at level as a rank 2 unit. And then all right, my next spell points, I'll just take Curse of Rust or Dispel. And now I'm rank 3 or 4, and I'm shitting all over the map. Like it's crazy what the Warlock can do as a unit, especially in a progression-based tournament. Um, which I know he likes to balance around progression-based tournaments, but my God, this guy is destroying progression-based tournaments. If you just look at some of this stuff. So you're absolutely just neutering any kind of plans that other teams can have with Dispel. And for 2 spell points, the biggest problem with the Warlock is you run out of slots to put magic in. That's honestly, um, I am in a good mood. It's a beautiful day. And it's always fun to stream. But like you run out of like ways to counter opponent. It's like too much luxury. It's insane how much this Warlock can absolutely do to people. Um, and we just had to bring True Griffin on here, who played the Undead. He's kind of the only Undead player last tournament to ask him how horrible it is to just strip all the buffs off his units. You know, like you spend all these OP, you're doing Call of Van Hell, trying to get your dodge and initiative up on the units, and then you just dispel it. The caveat is like Warlocks are kind of fast, so it is kind of harder to apply it. That's like the one caveat, I guess I'd say. But you could just as easily apply it at the start of the next round, you know. If it's Van Hell and you've increased your initiative, they've already gotten that bonus though. In that regard, I think Dispel works better on this melee resist warlock we've talked about. I think it fits his toolkit a bit because he's a bit slower with a shield. You can bring down his speed. You don't have to have the +10 initiative staff, so you can get him a little slower. So Dispel, very unique, special. It's extremely unique. The only other thing that dispels buffs is Idol of Change, and then the consumable elixir. And then the idol you could, in theory, place, but you can literally only place one. A dispel, you can just spam them around the map. So, I think dispel is spelled with 2 L's. I think that's I don't know if that's from the game or what, but I don't know. It looks really funny there. Nice German-looking word or something. Then we get to Dread of Aramar. Reduce melee hit chance by 10% for 2 turns. Also removes 2 offensive points and breaks the target stance. The stackable part is talking about reducing the offensive points. Hit chance the penalty increases to 20 for 3 turns, and you can remove 4. So the whole point of this is reduces hit chance by 20% and breaks your stance. So I think Lias says, boy, Nerve Shot is really strong. I can't believe how strong Nerve Shot is. Well, you know what? We have Nerve Shot and a AoE effect. How do you like that? And then you tack on I think this is the best hit chance reduction penalty in the game. Aside from again, area of effects I'm trying to think of one. Like you could say the enshrouding mist, but that's for range. That's a significant ranged penalty. I can't think of really another melee penalty at 20%. Deny the heretics 15. Most of them are 10 and 15. So this one's at 10 and 20. So the 20% is one of the biggest, and it's AoE, so you can apply it to multiple units. And then you can break multiple stances. So there's only one build that uses this, and this is the melee resistance warlock. It's around the caster. So is that a viable build? Yes, it's an insanely viable build. I've made numerous ones, and they are a massive headache. And what you do is you bring that warlock into the heat of combat, put it on the most dangerous unit, and then just spam this out. So again, we've talked about the melee resistance warlock. If you've put Dread of Aramar and then the other Blinding Light, and then you've also dispelled maybe their plus hit chance stuff from a Wolf Priest, we'll say, or something, you're swinging hit chance by 30, 40, 50%, even on other units in your warband that maybe aren't melee resistance units. That's a huge swing in your way in rolling dice. So they're going to miss. So as a melee resistance build, I used this in the Battle of Behemoths. It was insanely effective. Nobody could kill the guy. It broke stances, and it was lovely. The basic, I think, is less useful. It's still fine. Again, I don't think you take it, which is probably putting it... It's better than that because you're breaking stances. I mean, that one was bad. And I think it's just a stepping stone. You don't really take it, but it is good. I mean, if it's well, I have 2 skill points left, why don't I just take Mastery Nerve Shot AoE or reduce hit chances, Okay. Maybe you want to build the build a little differently and you just have 2 spell points left over and you still want to be effective melee resistance tank. I think that's fine. There comes a point where you've overdone it. So I think basic Dread of Aramar is still okay. But as for the mastery, what it does, it's completely unique. There's nothing else like it in the game. It's powerful. It's godly. So it's perfectly great with melee resistance builds. And then we get to the actual offensive point of the Warlock, which is Lightning Strike. So it costs 3 OP. It's the same as a Comet of Sigmar. It's the same as... I fucking never remember. Frostbite. There's so many wintry names in his spellbook. It's the same as Soulfire, which isn't in there. But Lightning Strike, 3 OP. It's like your standard 3 OP. There's Life Stealer, and it is the strongest damage 3 OP spell in the game. The range is 20 meters. Let me look at thieves now. 20 meters for the Comet. So I think that's standardized. 20 meters. So it's your 20 meter ranged attack. But again, he gets a staff. So it's 26 meters. Wait. This is confusing. Okay. I always get confused by that. That's talking about like the basic, but then you have to read this. It's saying 20 meters. I mean, it's like the bread and butter spell for the Warlock. And it is the best 3 OP spell in the game. I mean, I don't know if there's much else to say. And this is just, I agree with Mork. It's just kind of awful. I don't know if there's any reason to take basic. It's not usable, so it's not horrendous. But as a stepping stone, I don't even think you want to cast it, honestly. Maybe you can kill a unit with 3 OP. It happens to have, the basic does like significant damage. If you have all the buffs up, if you look at the Comet, it's about, was that 29 damage? And this does 17.5. It's less for sure, but as you scale that, that's almost like you can get close to like 35, 40 damage. So a basic lightning can kind of fuck up a unit even, but I digress. I think you just skip over it. But I don't know what else to say. This is the single most powerful magic spell in the game, so it's the best. It's the best. It's godly. So he's saying he's going to increase damage of basic spells so they're a bit more viable, which is okay. It's fine. I think that's splitting it. On the list of things that matter, I think that's near the bottom. If you're going to use time for coding, I wouldn't worry about that. So far we have just blinding light, just a smidge off, just a little off. It's not as powerful, but everything else has been pretty godly. Then we get to Armor of Lead. Again, there's nothing like this in the game. There's Wither, but this is an AoE thing with other things on it. Reduces movement range by 2 meters for 2 turns. Reduce the chance to pass climb, leap, jump down, dodge tests by 30%. Not stackable. And then movement is reduced to 3 meter, or increased to 3 meters reduction, and 40% for the penalties. So if you do stack this, you've reduced your opponent's movement by 5 meters and their dodge by 70%. Wither, I wish I had all the units up. We could quickly jump around. I probably should have. But Wither, I think, reduces by 2 meters for mastery, and it reduces your physicals by not the same. And this is a AoE. So it's like Wither Plus, in my opinion. Yeah, he's saying it used to be 1 and 2. I'm not too focused on that, honestly. I mean, it does matter. It does matter. And it's, again, the Warlock is so spoiled that you don't even see Armor of Lead. But Armor of Lead is insanely good. So it just says something about the Warlock in itself. What you're taking this for, again, this is what makes Mercs probably the strongest warband in the game. Arguably, I would say probably the strongest warband in the game. Is they can do Daredevil builds too. You have reduced the dodge by 40%. This is why you take it. This is great too. Don't get me wrong, because Mercs also can cast from 52 meters away. They can shoot you with longbows and just totally disable you that way. And then your reward is you walk into an ogre. Congratulations, you've made it to me. Here's an ogre with 750 HP and 70% armor. Good luck, you know. So the the combination of the two is what's great, but what I see it as is it enables daredevil builds. And again, I would say the basic is very strong. Like 30% is a significant dodge bypass. 2 meters is significant. And for just 2 spell points, I think you can easily throw that out there and enable your Daredevil Ogre, your Daredevil Champion. Those are going to be your two main candidates. So Armor of Lead just enables, again, another strategy for the Warband. So if you've seen, you have Daredevil builds enabled by the Warlock. You have melee resistance builds enabled by the Warlock. You have magic builds enabled by the Warlock, like pure raw magic damage. On top of the ranged builds that Mercs can bring to the table, and then they don't struggle to have melee, as we discussed with Curse of Rust and great axes and weapons. They can just chew through your armor as well. So I can't think of a single thing that Mercs can't do so far. And then you get to the Fireball, which is again back to magic damage. AoE, I want to say the strongest AoE. It might be the same as the it's got to be stronger than, oh man, what is the Doomweavers? No one ever uses it. The Twinkle Magic Doomweaver one. And then you got the Necromancer's Word of Death, I think it's called. I should just look at these. I should have had one open. Spell of Doom. 14 to 24. Oh, that's significantly better than the Spell of Doom. The Magister, it's not quite the same. I think his has got to be close. Yeah, that's significant. 28 to 38. But that's around the caster. Word of Pain, I think people like sleep on that build. But we'll do him later. You could talk about the Eshin, but that's also 3 OP. So it's really just like that spell, and I guess the Wolf Priest has one. Yeah. Oh, it has a bigger area. Okay. But you guys are getting the point. It's a really good ranged. Again, this is 20 meters, so you can get it up a decent amount as an AoE destructive cast. And I think it's going to be the same thing. The basic's going to be kind of here. I would say it's average. This is easily his worst spell. It was always going to be his worst spell because of the conditions of the game, the win conditions. You have all of these, which are godly, and then you have this, and it struggles to compete. You want to kill units, not kind of hurt a fair bit of units. And so I think the Warlock's got plenty of AoE stuff as well. You got the Blinding Light, the Curse of, or the Armor of Lead, the Dispel. I mean, there's enough ways to punish like clumped up people too. So I just don't think Fireball is going to find a niche in your Warband. If you want to damage a large group of people clumped together, you will take a Fireball, and you'll be happy with the results. But I just think given the relative rest of his spell book, I think it just is going to struggle to find a role. You could say it's above average. Independently looking at it as a AoE damage spell, it's probably great. But it's an AoE damage spell, which means it's not great. So you can abuse the AI with it. They do like to clump up a bit more. But again, you're just kind of half injuring everybody, where you really just want to isolate and kill targets. Because a target with 1 HP will be doing just as much damage as one at 50% HP, you know, or You just want to kill the target. If you can kill a bunch of target at once, it's even better, obviously. So maybe I'm being a little cruel. It could be great. I was thinking about this too. If you took a team of warlocks with fireballs and you took two marksmen with blunderbusses and just went and fought the I think you would actually just shit all over them. You would just absolutely kill 3, 4 units at once every turn. And so I think when you think about it for PvE, it is actually pretty good. And you could easily take a warlock with fireball and some blunderbuss marksmen and just shred, absolutely shred. So um, that's the warlock. I don't think any of this should be surprising. That everything is godly because everything he does is unique. And what holds him back is there's only 2 warlocks you can have at most, and then you have curse chances. You have to bypass magic resistance, and then you have spellcasting chances. And that's what kind of holds back magic. So I think magic does need to be strong. I think his is appropriate. I think this is what every caster wants to look like. Is this right here? Paranoia would probably argue, no, I want it to look more like a bell curve or like, even distribution. But I would argue that since a caster, this is literally what they do, their shit should work. They should function. Their magic should be scary. So I would say this is okay. And we're going to look at the other ones and see where the issues are. So I've had a bit of coffee. I'm going to go pee really fast, and then we'll keep the stream going, and then I'll do the next one. Okay, and I also thought about it a second, and it probably is average. Something I didn't talk about was this is significant. The fact that it's 4 OP and you have a shitty casting chance, and you can, like, it's hard to get 3 of them off. You'd have to take quick casting or whatever the equivalent is. And I think it's just the fact that you can only get 3 of them off, even with having to take extra skills. And then the casting chance, I think it's just not good, honestly. Did I get this shit again, dude? Oh my god, thanks. I've been getting these like virus riddled things. I don't. Look, this stuff is obviously a bit sketchy. This tier list stuff, but yeah, it's definitely not my McAfee. They want me to click it and then download a virus. It is not me. I don't have that. They're trying to sucker me. I'm not a teenager. I'm not going to click it. Um, it's done this with these builders. I keep reloading them. Let's see if it's come up on the other ones. Not yet. So yeah, I think that is. I still don't think it changes the armor of lead too much because getting 2 of them off is just fine anyway, or it's done its job, or you get that off and then the curse of rust on the victim you're going after, and it's only 6 OP. You can still do a fucking lightning for all you care. So that's that. And then we jump over to the sisters. I feel bad going from the warlock to the sisters because this is probably going to get kind of ugly. But here we are. So you go from starting with Scavenger's Curse, which is a very viable right off the gate, to something totally shit. So the Purifier used to start with a comment in vanilla, which was very good. You would quickly master it and do a lot of damage, which was good because sisters had no ranged, and they're not very good at melee. Now, instead, we have Blessing of Athleticism, which is your starting spell for the Purifier. I think each unit, to be fair, it's neat that you did this, but the Matriarch starts with Sigmar's Might, the Maiden starts with Sinful Speech, and the Purifier starts with Blessing of Athleticism. So it's cool that each one starts with something different. I just think the spells aren't good enough. So, Blessing of Athleticism increases dodge and parry bypass and the chance to climb, do athletics by 10%. Dodge and parry bypass, it jumps to a huge 15% for 3 turns. So what is this for? This is for your units. It's around the caster. I've talked about how horribly awkward these are. It's a buff. You have to clump up as a team and try to apply this to multiple units. At least itself also. To give yourself kind of a shitty Black Hunger. Let me look at this again. I should have kept this one over. Move to duplicate, I think is what I wanted. There we go. Let's look at Black Hunger. Black Hunger increases damage, and then dodge and parry bypass is 20%. So I try to think of like equivalent skills. This is 15%. It doesn't give any damage buff. So it's really shitty Black Hunger. There's no equivalent self-damage like Black Hunger has. Is there much else that it does dodge and parry bypass? I can't think of much else. I mean, of course, there's like weak spot and other things, but those are like active skills. You know, Kidney Strike is way better. You know, you're getting 30%. But again, it's slightly different. So my point is like the buff is really low. Like 15% is not amazing. I think that's part of the problem. The reason it's around the caster is rough too. Like at low levels, which is where you start with this with, it's a low level spell. You can get it at 3, master it at 9. That's what all these 2 OP spells are saying. You can master me really easily. Is 15% dodge parry bypass going to significantly help you kill the opponents? Where it's already like, I don't know, 45 to 6, I don't know, very low dodge parry chances anyway. I don't think it matters. You're walking around with white weapons still, maybe some blue weapons, and you're almost killing yourself more by casting this, I think. You'd much rather just swing with 2 OP or just not eat a curse trying to get this off. I think you just go up and hit something with a hammer, and if you get dodged or parried, okay. You may not have, though, and then you're landing 30 damage, whatever it's going to be. And I think that damage mathematically is going to be more significant than casting this and hoping to get the bypass. The only caveat with Blessing of Athleticism is it should be standard on your Maiden, which is ironic because she starts with Sinful Speech. I would much rather the Maiden start with Blessing of Athleticism because she's going to master this, and she's going to master Sigmar's Might. So the Maiden starts with a spell she doesn't want, and the Purifier starts with a spell she doesn't want. So the Maiden should start with either Sigmar's Might or Blessing of Athleticism because they're both self-buffs, and she's going to cast both of them on herself to increase crit chance, damage, dodge and parry bypass chance as a Daredevil build. But instead she has to waste spell points training them. So the Purifier starts with it. She can do a Daredevil build. She's like the only other Daredevil build in the team, but she can't disengage. It's kind of awkward because she's not a maiden. So she gets tiring if she's using dual Sigmarite Warhammers. Yeah, I know. It affects other people, but again, not significantly enough to matter. I mean, if you're really facing a dodge or parry build, you're talking about 100% chances, right? What is 15% going to do? And then the sisters don't have spears. They don't have any weapon that can take advantage of it. Look at this list of weapons. Oh, you can't see them. That's right. The only thing is dagger or the Sigmarite Warhammer. The Sigmarite Warhammer gives you 9% dodge chance bypass. So with a Sigmarite Warhammer Mastery, a purple one, you have 9% plus 15, you're at 24%. If I just put on a spear, I think it's 35%. You have to do all that effort to not be as good as a spear. The dagger gives you 15, so it's a bit better. Again, still not as good as a spear. You're at 30%. And that's it. They have no parry bypass tool at all. So this 15% parry bypass is just doing nothing for them. The basic is horrendous. Nobody cares. It's not doing anything. Okay, that's a bit cruel. You could stack it. I don't see how you're going to stack it, though. It's just too much effort. I would say it's bad. I wouldn't even say it's average. It does matter. Look, it matters. If the maiden gets this, she gets 15% more dodge bypass. That matters. She has 100% athletic tests, though. Like, what are we doing? So, I mean, okay, he's saying you duel the weapons. You're still literally not at spear. You're at 18%. You're at 33. I think spear is 35. One spear is still better. So, I mean, look, it's not nothing, and only the maiden can do this. Again, if that's not to say the Purifier can't. The Warband I should have made, and I know I should have made it, and I've made it, and I've PvP'd with it, so why would I keep doing the same thing? The point for me for the tournament was to try something new. But you make a Daredevil Purifier, you make a Daredevil Maiden, and you just cheerlead her, and then you make a Daredevil Purifier that supports the Maiden, but then also becomes the Maiden if the Maiden dies. And then you also make an Order Leader. Order Leaders are like so dumb, it's so simple to make. So you make an Order Leader that can then order the Maiden, or if the Maiden dies or the Purifier's in trouble, you order the Purifier. So it can get off 3 Daredevil hits, and then you order it 3 times. You can't second win the Purifier. But that's literally the only build sisters have, and it's sad that it's the only build that they have. If we're going to look at, since we're really doing a deep dive here, looks like, if you can go to the Purifier, I know you guys can't see this. If I get the 15 accuracy, I'm at 11 weapon skill. And that's not terrible. That's truly not terrible. It's like average. There's some really bad ones out there. But that's not great also. So the good news is she can easily get to 15 strength and still have some left over for toughness. But you're going to have to probably take the Martial book and then the chess piece of Martial. So you gain 7. So you're at 18 weapon skill, 15 accuracy for weak spot. You get Daredevil. She can function. She just can't disengage, and she'll die if you look at her. She'll just absolutely melt and be dead in a turn if you actually looked at her. So she can self-buff Blessing of Athleticism on herself. I'm digressing here. Just to get as good as a spear. And then, of course, units that are truly Daredevil have other options. We just talked about Curse of Lead. Mutations give you extra arms that have dodge bypass and hit chance. Skaven have Black Hunger. If you're looking at other true, actual Daredevil builds, the sisters are still the shittier version of one. So I'm talking all around, and I think it's just bad. I mean, the athletics don't matter. I think the numbers are just too low. They're just significantly too low. You look at, again, something that truly matters. This guy's got 40%. Now you're going to say, well, okay, that's a debuff. But 40%, that is almost 3 times better than the buff. I don't know what math ratios we were using in determining all this. Because, look, no one cares about the athletics. No one cares. Sisters can't capitalize on any of the parry bypass you just gave them. They're kind of getting... So this spell gives Sisters a little bit of dodge bypass. And it's not enough dodge bypass to even kind of worry about casting the spell. And you can just remove it with the spell anyway. Anyway, it's not good. It sucks that it's not good. But it needs improved. Probably the dodge or significant parry bypass, because they have no parry bypass tools. That's it. Like, this parry is like, literally everything is pointless except the dodge bypass. Sigmar's Might increases melee critical hit chance and melee damage by 5%. And then the Mastery is critical hit chance by 10%, melee damage by 10%. So the melee damage is pretty much nothing. Basically, give yourself 10% crit chance. We were talking about Sigmarite Hammer. What is that? 33 average damage. Sigmar's Might gives you 3 more damage. Mastery Sigmar's Might gives you 3 more damage. So that's absolutely pointless. The point is to try to crit something. And that's not nothing. That's fine. The Maiden likes that. The Sigmarite Hammers do give crit chance. I would say it's great. And this is just kind of awful again. It's an AoE around the caster. The awkwardness of stacking these is just insanely awkward. So I was just talking about, I'm punishing it, so I should talk about it, is the synergy. There needs to be some synergy, and the parry has no synergy. The Sigmarite Warhammer at least has 4% crit chance on it. So it synergizes a bit with Sigmar's Might, but as I've pointed out on the forums, Sword gives 8%. So if I just put on dual swords, I'm gaining 8% crit chance over your Sigmarite Hammers, or a Great Sword. So you've basically gained 2% critical hit chance as the Sisters. Now, you could argue if a spell is powerful enough that it gives 2% crit chance and 3 damage, is that a good spell? I would argue it's a shitty spell. If I could just put on swords, like that, mathematically, this is what Sigmar's Might is doing for the team. Now you could then start to do this backtrack, but but you also reduce magic resistance, because it's like, what are we trying to do though? We're trying to synergize a build here. Am I trying to fucking do magic or crit you? There's no crit magic. Am I trying to daredevil you? Like, it's just like spread thin. This is just spread so thin everywhere. One weapon's trying to do everything for this warband, because all their other weapons are jack shit. They're just trash. So if you truly do look at it, I have my Sigmarite Warhammer because I want to crit you, or a dagger. Again, those are my 2 options. If I just put on swords, I get twice as much crit chance. So by using Sigmar's Might, I gain 2% critical hit chance over any other unit with swords, which I think is every other fucking warband in the game has swords. Right? Witch Hunters have swords. Mercs have swords. Cult has swords. Skaven have swords. And vampires, I think, have swords. So Sisters don't have swords. So you've gained 2% critical hit chance and 10% damage, which we decided is 3 damage. I just don't understand what this is doing. Your casters support your critters. What critters? I don't use swords. Now, if your argument is you bring a smuggler into your warband, okay. I'm neutrally trying to look at Sisters, though. I agree you could bring, it muddies the waters, but now you would also say, well, you bring in a wolf priest. I'm looking at this in a vacuum of a Sisters warband. So you can bring in a wolf priest, you can bring in a smuggler, but are you the Sisters anymore? You're now the wolf priest smugglers of Sigmar. And literally they can do that too. But you could say Sigmar's Might with them it helps, but it's not good. It's almost worse. Again, this is the maiden, like keeps these alive. It's the only thing that keeps them alive. The sisters have 0 other crit tools available to them. For example, the cult can use swords, and then they have blood offering. The undead have the rotten touch, or the ghoul can strip your crit resistance. There's other tools out there that help the other warbands with critting. So I just don't see where the sisters then kind of double down on the critting. The Skaven have Art of Silent Death, you know. The Poison Wind Globadier can go in any of the Destruction Warband. If we're going to take that approach and use his crit resistance globes and strip that away, you know. The Doomweaver can do his little dance. So, yeah. I don't think you're just, it's healthy to have the conversation, but ultimately my point is made. I think Sigmar's Might, when just compared to someone using 2 swords, gives you 2% crit chance and 10% damage, which if you're using the Sigmarite hammers is 3 damage. So you're going to gain 2% crit chance, which is a 1 out of 50 roll, and you're going to gain 3 damage when you get that crit. Congratulations. Or just when you hit the unit. And I think that's, compared to any other spellbook we're going to be looking at, it's just absolute trash. And then you get the Sinful Speech, and things aren't improving for the sisters. This one's very bizarrely, it doesn't follow the rules of the mod. The basic only lasts 1 turn. It should last 2 turns, just like every basic spell. Its range is nothing. That's not good. So you kind of have to master it to gain 3 turn, actually have it last a bit, and then you gain some range. It is only 2 OP, but here's the problems. If you're playing PvE, you want the AI to actively cast spells. The worst thing you could do is put Sinful Speech on an enemy maiden. Like when a maiden walks up and casts Sigmar's Might or other useless spells, you are like so excited. So Sinful Speech actively hurts you in PvE. In PvP, you remove it with, elixirs. You can use the Idol of Change. Now, granted, if you put it on a caster, they can't cast these things. But there's ways to instantly remove it. If you would say, I can't use any consumables, I would say it's a very good spell. So it's very hard to rate in that sense. The basics, pretty much horrendous. I don't want to have to recast that every turn. You're wasting my time. The mastery is, considering PvE, it brings it way down here. And then if you consider consumables, if it was purely PvP and they couldn't remove it, it would be kind of up here. So that's why it's really hard to rank. Like, if I could get this on your Doomweaver or your Warlock, it's kind of dead, right? Now you have to punch through the magic resistance, but all things considered, most tournaments have a consumable. The PvE is a big part of the game, so it's probably just in the really bad category. I couldn't use it in this most recent tournament, for example. It was, you had unlimited consumables, so it was probably horrendous. I trained it just to prove a point, and then used it once and it didn't work. I think the unit was literally standing in an Idol of Change. If you're just standing in an Idol of Change, I can't apply it. So if you have your Doomweaver just always putting an Idol of Change and standing in it, well, guess what? That's what they do. They put down Idols of Change and then stand in them so they can cast. You can't even apply this spell. It would immediately be stripped off. So it's really bad. So he's saying it should act more like a ranged Jaw Strike. I agree. That would 100% help fix it. If I could have cast this on Mork's very basic Order Leader, yeah, it would have helped a lot. So, or it should not be a magic effect. Just not have it be able to be stripped off. And then now you have a spell that's actually useful. And the sisters can force you to come in and fight them. That's in theory what you're trying to do here. It's obvious what the designers were trying to do with 2 OP, Commodus Sigmar, Sinful Speech. They're forcing you to come in and engage them. But all of that's just been lost in the mod. So, which gets us to Comet of Sigmar, which has nothing changed except it costs 1 more OP to cast. You have less range with it in vanilla. You have a harder time casting it, and you eat more curses when you cast them. So everything about this spell has been nerfed in the mod. Every aspect of it, except damage, was left the same, but relative to cost, that makes it weaker. So 1 OP more, harder to cast, less range, more curses when casting it. This was the bread and butter spell for the Warband. So basic, you're doing yourself more harm than just swinging a weapon at 15. What is this? 14 and a half? Is that the midway point? 14 and a half damage. Yay. I can't think of a worse thing for 3 OP that does 14 and a half damage. Like a great weapon, a white great weapon that's had its damage reduced, but then it's not 3 OP. I mean, it's hard to think of anything weaker than that, possibly. So I can't think of a lower rating for it. And then you get to the mastery. So you can only cast 3 of them. Now, before everyone says, we're again looking at this in a vacuum. You have 9 OP as a hero. You can cast 3 Comets of Sigmar. And then you're going to do 29 damage, which you can kind of double it, given all the pain and all that. It comes close to doubling, which is like 60 damage. So you can do 60 damage 3 times, which is 180 damage, which won't kill anything. So we looked at lightning, which is significantly stronger, and it's also 3 OP. That's 35. That's 70. I feel like it gets even higher than that. I feel like lightnings are near 90 or something. So maybe a comet. I want to say the biggest comets I've seen are like 60, 65. So it's probably the weakest 3 OP spell. We looked at this a bit. It's weaker than Frostbite. It's the same damage literally, but this has a debuff associated with it. It's hard to look at Soulfire because it's an AoE. 20 to 30. So that's 25. So it's a little better than Soulfire, but Soulfire is again AoE, so it's supposed to do a little less damage, and you're supposed to consider you hit a couple units. If you look at Lifestealer, I think it's literally the same or maybe a little weaker, but Lifesteal heals you. If you look at Warp Lightning, again, you have to kind of, again, there's not many other single target spells. So it's the single worst single target 3 OP spell in the game, and it should be treated as such. So I would say it's average. It's not godly. I mean, you need it. That's the saddest part about this entire thing, is this is the Sisters' only range damage in the entire Warband. This is it. This is their only range damage. And then we talked about the staff with the Warlock giving him extra ranged. Now, you could say it's the Sigmarite Warhammer, but it's not really. This does nothing. You have to hit things to make it work. So their casting weapon is the Sigmarite Great Weapon. And it gives you a 50% chance. So it's -5 speed. So it's 15 slower than the staff. It has less damage than the staff. The staff was pretty good damage. The staff was 60 damage. This does like 52. Now this has armor bypass. But the staff had 30% parry, which I think is significantly better. If I'm a caster that wants to do damage, I want to survive. So I want to enter a Web of Steel. This literally allows Web of Steel and then gives you an increased chance. So again, it does more damage. It allows a Web of Steel. and that's kind of it. And then it gives casting range. Now this gives you a chance to recover 1 OP at a 50% rate. So you would, to cast a fourth comet, you would need it to proc every time. And mathematically, the odds of that happening are not happening. There's a rune you can give the other innervation. It starts with an I that can give back OP, but you don't want that because you want pain or reach because you're trying to be a warlock. You're trying to do damage. So we ignore that one. So the other option is you have to like quit casting. But if you're saying you have to quit cast, well, this fella over here, he can use quick casting. This isn't unique to sisters. So the quick casting has left you at net neutral with the warlock. So what you would be saying is, even though you can't parry and you don't have Web of Steel, you should cast some comets, then walk up with your purifier who can't disengage, and swing the weapon one time. Swing your hammer. And probably not break the enemy stance that it's in. So, as a casting weapon, it's failing, and it's not helping you cast more comets. If you maybe twice get back an OP, you can then quick cast a bunch and cast comets. But at that point, your unit will have exploded or become so mind-eaten that it can't even function. So Fervor and Wrath and all these things that increase the cost, divine curses increase cost of casting a lot of times, or suck away OP and SP. So you're like self-punishing yourself, let alone mind-eaten, then you're not casting at all. So the weapon is also holding back the comets from functioning in any significant way. So all of that combined, it just leads it to be average. It's very bad. And it's a shame because this is, again, literally their only range damage in the game. So, all right, the two OP spells are very bad. Let's see if we can find something that will save the sisters. You have Divine Revelation, increases range resistance by 20% and melee resistance by 5 for 2 turns, and then range resistance increased to 30, melee by 10, range increase to 30. So this is a buff that increases the range itself for ally. We talked about the Maiden. This is her 3rd spell. So it's unfortunately she starts with Sinful Speech, and she just has to ignore that. And then she takes Mastery Blessing of Athleticism, Mastery Divine Revelation, and Mastery Sigmar's Might, because she wants to have range resistance so she's not shot, and she can cast it on herself. She wants the crits and then the dodge bypass, and then her spellbook's done. So I would argue she really kind of wants Healing Circle in there, but I mean this will be the 3rd spell she takes. And so casting on herself, it's nice to guarantee kind of lock up that final range resistance for her. What is it? It's like 45. Oh, here. Oh, she only gets 15. That's very minor. I can't believe it's that low already. Ooh, they got way smushed down. I thought it was still like 40% or something. It's probably because it's so good because of her marshals and intelligence. So she's at like 40%. I mean, it's standard for 15. So we'll just say she's at 40% ranged. So you can see why that kind of matters. That gets her now to 70%. So it makes her decently range resistant again. The other units taking it, you can put it on an augur who's already very range resistant. Ooh, she got perception checks, and she should always be running around with perception for the 20%, and then she has decent agility, which helps with range resistance. For melee resistance builds, again, the augur, I think it's standard. You put it on her. I use it on the matriarch who can make a melee resistance build. To be quite honest, I think this has become like their strongest spell, which is depressing to me. The range resistance matters. It's a significant amount, and the melee resistance matters. And if you put this in an engage a unit, 60% range resistance is kind of what makes their warband. Now, a single dispel will again rip all this off. Idol of Change. It's easy to remove this, an elixir. But if you've brought a ranged warband against sisters, you're already losing, which is what Lias did against me, and he lost significantly. Um, so Paranoia said it used to be 30. I think it could be 30 still. She's taking this either way. I can't think of the third spell for her besides that. You could argue Comets, but I would argue that that would be stupid. I honestly think I'm going to look at the numbers again one more time. I think it's 20. Yeah, I think that's good enough to you kind of stack them. I don't want to say that's godly because you're only reducing like ranged. You're not reducing magic. The melee's a bit. It's awkward to keep up at 3. Like if you compare this to other 3 OP buffs, like Armor of Righteousness, I don't think it's as good. There's other 3 OP buffs I think you get more bang out of. Corpse Flesh, I think is better. So I think it's a notch down. But I think this is sadly your bread and butter spell for sisters. And I got to tell you, it doesn't feel good to know that. I'll show you the other bread and butter spells, which we're about to get to. Hearts of the Griffin. Yeah, we already know where this is going. Grants immunity to all alone tests for 2 turns. Well, great. Also grants immunity to fear. Oh, sweet. Terror is not on this list. It's AoE around the caster, so it's horribly brutal to apply. You can't cast it across the map like Armor of Righteousness or something. I've talked about all alone tests a bazillion times. If my unit is in an all alone, it's losing anyway, okay? And if it's in an all alone, it's because it's a Serenity tank, and I don't care. So the use condition of you're in an all alone is so bad. Like, your unit's fighting 2 units versus 1. It's going to lose that battle eventually. You want to get it out of that. You're going to do everything you can to get out of an all alone. Now, if it's a henchman, it's fine. Great. Smash it against the wall. It can't run away. It's just doing its job of standing there. So it's horrendous. This is horrendous. It doesn't give terror immunity. I can't even get behind something that doesn't give terror immunity as well. If it's immunity to everything, okay. I mean, no one's ever taken this in the history of Mordheim. I don't know what else to say about it. Healing Circle restores 100 wounds, 1 use only, and then 200 wounds. So there was a lot of debate about Healing Circle back in the day in the tournaments. People thought it was too powerful. If you're using Healing Circle, things typically aren't going well for you. Like the kind of uses where you use Healing Circle are the maps where maybe it's like Hunters and Prey, and kind of a battle happened, some units died, you regroup, and you're going to battle again, and you get to use Healing Circle to kind of top off your units. The problem with the previous tournament is 2 healing potions is better than 1 Healing Circle. 3 healing potions is basically a Healing Circle mastery. Like, it was so much easier to just chug a healing pot. And then anyone can have that too, henchmen and stuff. So I used it like once or twice. I think I used it against Albro. It saved my augur for a turn. And then it died the next turn anyway. It mattered a bit in the moment. I can't really think of any other times I got use out of it. It's not very good. And it's kind of was one of their bread and butter spells from vanilla. It's 4 OP, which is very awkward to use. For the casting chance. So you only get 1 use. So you're basically at like an 80% casting chance. 75, 80? I think it's 75. Right? Saying minus 20. And then if you fuck it up, sorry. I think basic, it's hard to squeeze it in. In PvE, like if you could throw this on a unit and it can save you, I think it's got much more use in PvE. And I would say it's good in PvE. It's not very good in PvP. Healing potions in PvP do a better job. Um, Topping off during like a story mission, it's very useful. So I don't know. Like it's really hard to find a good use condition for it. Like if you're healing, you're losing. Is healing going to change it around for you much? I don't think it does. It's hard to get it on the units. When you do pop it off on the right unit though, it could be a bit of a game changer. Out of all the healings, the only worse healing I would argue is the Skaven Poison Wind Globadier Healing Globe, whatever it's called. Idol of Blood is massively superior. It heals significantly more. Healing Hands, for like what it does, is significantly better. You throw that on the key target, which is probably your Executioner or a Templar, and then totally top it off. And it's also 4 OP. Um, is there another heal I'm missing? I think that's all 4 of them. So it's like the third worst heal. So I just don't think it's that good. More of a PvE spell. It, I think a lot of beginners are like, what are you talking about? Like, it really helps keep your units, because I got to think about it. Like, for PvE, for beginner players, I think it can really help them keep units alive. And I would recommend that they take these 2 spells. Now, the AI is very bad at shooting you in PvE, but the melee resistance will help you a bit. And I think if you're doing, like, and you could probably take this, but like if you're doing PvE, you're taking this spell, and then the next spell. And this is the only way that sisters function now is Sigmar's Second Wind. Restore 2 offensive points, but consume 2 strategy points. And if it does a stun recovery, and it gives 4 offensive points and removes all of their strategy points, basically. 4 of them. This was changed from vanilla, where it didn't remove strategy points, because what people would do is delay, add more second wind, hit, kill, walk to the next victim, delay. So it was actually nerfed. There's argument if it did or didn't need nerfed. I would say the basic is a stepping stone. It's not awful. It is awful. It's 4 OP to get back to. But then the other one's godly for what it does. The slight way to like counter this is I did it with my maiden was take exhaustion. So your first unit would put the Sigmar's Second Wind. You know, you delay. It strips all your SP. Your maiden gets to act. You can at least then exhaust and then delay one more time. You're not going to another victim though. If you take mastery exhaustion, you can go to another victim within 1 SP of you. I think that's the one way you kind of get around it. But it's very hard to cast. Again, you can fail a lot, but you're basically, and again, this isn't really helping you win. This is again the problem with sisters. If you're healing, you're just not, you're using your OP to not die. And if you're using Sigmar's Second Wind, you're just taking your OP from one hero and putting it on the maiden. You're just transferring OP. You're not truly generating more hits. You're generating more hits for the unit you want hitting, but you're just transferring attacks. So it's kind of a net neutral move in a lot of ways. Um, so I think it's okay, and this is what you would use. Any beginning Sisters player, I think, should just try this strategy. And that's all that Sisters do now, sadly. And that's where they're at. So a lot different than the Warlock. I'm going to pee one more time again, and then we'll look at one more. So just leave the stream on here. Okay, sorry. Kind of, I felt like I rushed it there at the end because, well, I had to pee. So, just I want to talk about it one more time before we go. Um, if you get the comet back to 2 OP, I think it goes back where it should be with the Warlock, and it's a very scary tool. Um, we talked about blessing of athleticism. It's just too weak, which holds it back. Sigmar's might, it doesn't synergize well because they don't have swords. I mean, it's not nothing. I think the damage can go up on it. 10% for some reason is bizarrely low. I want to say Blood Offering, which is the closest equivalent skill I can think of, is 20%. Yeah. So, like, you have literally the same skill, except it does 20%. I get it, one's an active, but, I think you could go up on the damage, considering sisters can't crit nearly as well. This crit is less useful for the sisters because they only have Sigmarite Warhammers. So you should probably reward them with more damage. It could be 30%, for example, because the relative growth is not good. Um, does need more crit. You could say more crit, honestly, to make up the loss of swords. To be quite honest. Um, but then you're like, well, what if you do bring a smuggler and a wolf priest? Um, I want to talk about Hearts of Griffin though. Like, how do you fix it? I think it needs to be another buff in there somehow. Like, increases. Do you make it like immunity, just like the Musk of Courage, Like, or do you then also add in like some really good buff that the sisters can use? And you'd have to think about what that buff should be. Should it be more parry and dodge bypass? Should it be something that makes them tougher? It's like your heart, your toughness, and in that sense, give them more dodge and parry. I don't know. I think there's solutions to also, if you're going to make it like the Musk of Courage, but then to also add in something for the sisters where they'd want to cast this spell on each other as a group. Um, okay, yeah. So you're saying like it gives an initiative buff, um, +1 meters movement, +20 initiative. I don't know. You could see things where that. I think that's what it would need. Yeah. So, and I think it would pull it out of the gutter. Um, and then I did want to talk about, okay, Divine Rev. I kind of sped through Sigmar's Second Wind, and since we're not all like veterans here, what you do with Sigmar's Second Wind is this implies like for counter attacks, but what you do with the unit is you want it to be faster in initiative, attack and use its OP, and then you delay. And then you have the slower caster use Sigmar's Second Wind, and it recharges the offensive points on that unit. So in this case, the Maiden. It's like literally always the Maiden. I've tried this with Daredevil Sister Superiors, and they're really shit. It's okay, but in PvE, but otherwise it's kind of shit. The other one we talked about was maybe the Purifier, but we talked about how she struggles with dual wielding and doing, the decay, the tiring effect really adds up. So basically, only the Maiden, you delay, you restore her offensive points, and she keeps swinging with her dual weapons of destruction or whatever. You're either going to do flails of shit that do like 50 damage a pop, dual wielded, or you're going to do, I guess, the Sigmarite Warhammers and try to crit somebody. And so that's what Sigmar Segment Wind is used for. It's recharging the Maiden and letting her just kill things. So. So that you guys can debate a bit about Hearts of Griffin, but I do think it can be discussed on the Discord. I don't know if you just right away give it immunity to All Alone, Tear, and Fear at basic, and then the mastery I don't know, but I think it needs some kind of buff. to make it competitive. Okay, so again, we can look. We have the Warlock, just dominated, and then you have the poor sisters. Considering the power of magic, that's not great, Bob. We can make the masteries there. That brings us to, it looks like, the Wolf Priest. A unit that can be used by all of these factions. A very fun unit. I like a lot of his tools. He starts with Ulrich's Gift. We talked about starting spells, so we'll start there again, I guess. Starting with Scavenger's Curse. Pretty good. Not bad to have this little initiative thing right out the gate, and it's easy to master. Blessing of Athleticism for the Purifier. Absolute dog shit. Sinful Speech for the Maiden. Absolute dog shit. Sigmar's Might for the Matriarch. All right, but we've discussed how it only ultimately gives you 2% critical hit chance and 10% damage. So kind of shit. The Wolf Priest starts with a good spell, Ulrich's Gift. This thing will get you killed, though. I'm telling you. I can't even tell you how many times people have like, why couldn't I disengage? It's because of this. It increases melee hit chance and damage by 10%. Immunity to all alone. Like, this is like already smushing together multiple spells from the sisters. But prevents use of flee, disengage, and ranged attacks. That's really nice. And skills for 2 turns. Okay, what is that about? Is that new? I don't remember anything about skills. Ranged attack skills? I'm pretty sure you can still like armor break and shit with this, unless I'm missing something. Melee hit chance increases by 15%, damage by 15, and the range increases. So right off the bat, you're gaining 10% damage and 10% hit chance, which is pretty nice early on in Mordheim. It's important to land the hits. You just got to make sure you kill the target. Otherwise, your ass is not getting out of there. And this is something I've wanted in my sister's warband with the Righteous Fury and stuff. But I also was like, ultimately kind of backed off on the Wolf Priest and wasn't bringing him because of that inability to disengage. So if you apply the Righteous Fury and the hamstring and then you can't get away from the target, what is the point of stripping all its SP? So this is more for a unit that's going to be stuck in there and keep fighting. So like your maidens, your ogres, and people that just want to like attack away. And in that sense, it's really powerful. It's a good tool. Mork used it on, I'm sure he uses it on his ogre. It's only 2 OP. It's really good. Like right off the bat, it's probably great because 10% hit chance is significant. And you'll cast this. Like, will I cast this when I have the spell, which is kind of what we were talking about here with these. I'm sorry, wrong. With like the starting spells. Like, I will be casting Scavenger's Curse probably right out the gate. I probably am not casting this because it's just going to. I mean, I could if I had nothing else to do. I'm not casting that. I might cast this, right? I'm definitely casting Ulrich's Gift out the bat. And then, but it is still not finished. But the finished ones, I would say, is still godly because of its use condition. The disengage sucks. But on the units you're using it on, I think it's just fine. And then you get to Snow King's Decree, another 2 OP spell. When performing a melee or ranged attack, inflicts 12.5 damage. Priests of Ulrichs are immune. Target gets 1 initial. So this has changed. In vanilla, like, you would keep having a resistance check every time. And if you resisted it, you wouldn't take it. So once it's landed now, it's landed, which is a buff for it. That's important. And now the damage is 17.5. You can stack them for 25 to 35. That's 30 average damage per swing, which is Adrenaline Rush. And that is significant. That's not nothing. Taking Ad Rush every swing is bad. That said, you have to stack it. I would say it's It's not going to get above average. I don't think it's going to go below it because of what we just talked about with stacking. And this one's not going to go much farther because it's reliant upon its friend here. 17 and a half per swing is not nothing. Also, every second swing's an ad rush, basically. So you put this on a unit in PvP mostly. You could do it in PvE and drag out things. You could put it on the AI and have them self-hurt. They're not very effective with their OP usage, though. So this is more of a PvP spell, but it can be used in PvE. And I think you can have some fun with it, especially if you use it with like Trial by Pain and other ways of stacking that. It's worth a player of the game to try this strategy, and I think they would be happy to try it. But I don't think it's going to get much higher than where it is right there. And I like the change that you only get one resistance check. Again, you can dispel it, elixir. There's ways to just get rid of this too. You can not attack, which is bad though. But like if you're close to death, you delay, let your unit use some healing pots, and then you start attacking it. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. It's always that spell. Why couldn't I what, did you have Ulrich's Gift? I do it to this day. I'm like, fuck, Ulrich's Gift. Winter's Chill, another bread and butter amazing spell for the Wolf Priest. I feel like everyone takes these first three spells, and it's hard not to. You take Ulrich's Gift, Winter's Chill, and Frostbite. Winter's Chill, when engaged, it creates a debuff upon them that reduces hit chance and damage. And then the mastery does 15% 3 turns. It's very bizarre because you can actually use an elixir and remove this. But you like in a weird way, I think you can use it on the opponent, but the way it works is kind of bizarre coding wise. But for all intents purposes, it's melee resistance. Fuck. This coffee makes you burp. Who knew? I thought it was beer. It could just be my stomach lining rotting. Anyway, it's only 2 OP. You can spam it across the map. It's got 30 meters range. You can give a lot of melee resistance to your team. We were just talking about, if you take that Ulrich Wolf Priest and you put him in here with the Blinding Light and Dread of Aramar, like, holy shit. It's crazy how broke Mercs can be. Truly broken. Like, if you want just the brokenest, you can have this Dread of Aramar, Blinding Light, take a Wolf Priest and a Warrior Priest. Do Deny the Heretics. I mean, it's too much, honestly, to be quite honest. But so Winter's Chill, it's very useful for melee resistance builds. Again, I think that doesn't dip below here. You can get away with a basic and still get good results. Like 15% is a good result, or 10%, I'm sorry. It's just annoying to have to keep recasting it. And then stacking it for 25 is always a good thing. I would say it's up there too. The damage reduction isn't nothing. So if you put Winter's Chill on, you've already negated the mastery level Sigmar's Might, is what this does. Which is crazy, right? So it's a pretty good spell. Yeah, exactly. You can stack it on something and have great effect. Just like, and the Wolf Priest encourages it. Like, you want to stack these, you want to stack this, and you want to stack this. You can even stack this for 2 SP. The Wolf Priests want to stack a lot of stuff, and even the rest of the spells. You'll see the Wolf Priest's entire kit does really well when stacking things. So I think in that sense it helps bring his up to average. I don't want to say they're like amazing, because again, in a vacuum, if you're only running one Wolf Priest, I don't think it's that amazing, to be honest. That's not down here where a lot of basics were, like there's some bad basics. What is this weird skull? I gotta find the right tabs. There's so many tabs. Wild Pack. Oh, we're at Frostbite. We haven't done. This jumps around. Again, this is the Comet. Level damage 24 to 34, but removes 1 SP. I mean, removing 1 SP is not nothing. That, like, anytime you can add those things in, it's as for free. Like, okay. I want to say in vanilla basics 1 and masteries 2, but because of the duration now, it's 1 and 1. And it matters. If it's a ranged spell, which this is, it makes it a little harder for them to reach you. You can see putting Frostbite on with Armor of Lead, you can have good results. And so on, crippling shots. So you can really kind of reduce your opponent's mobility. And this Frostbite does it's better than Comets in the sense it removes 1 SP, and it's even better in the build. We'd have to go up here, but we talked about these already. I don't love it, but there's ways to do. It's probably a passive. There's ways for him to get increased magic damage. That's spellcasting chance. That the sisters can't get. So he can make this even stronger. Ulrich's Chosen? So, no, did I just pick that one again? It must be the Ulrich's Fury. So when you miss, you get 30% spell damage. So that's something sisters can't take. So you're already getting an even better comment. And we've talked about this with other units, so let's go to it now. This is his unique, very unique weapon. This one's minus 10 initiative. Again, very good damage. This is best of all of them. He's at 63. The staff was 60. And then look at this here. Again, something sisters cannot get. So it's already a much better comment with the Great Axe in your hand versus the shitty fucking Sigmarite Great Hammer, which is anemic damage. This blessed. And then you have the staff where you can actually parry, better damage, good initiative, really good initiative. And then he has the critical hit chance, which kind of works in his build too. So a much better weapon as a caster. Good damage. He can crit, which he actually kind of wants to crit with some of his builds. And then he also has the spell damage. The sisters would love to have this kind of blessed over the other trash one. So he can get much better damage out of his Frostbite is the point, ultimately. And of course it's going to then mean it's better. So I can't put it godly because the lightning is. And I don't think that 1 SP makes it godly, but it sure is close. And having the risk of this ice out on the battlefield means you have to worry about the ice on the battlefield. This one, it's just probably, it's not down here even though it wants to be, maybe just because of that 1 SP removal. It's still awful though, let's be quite honest. And then Paranoia is talking about Ice Storm versus the AoE versus the single target, I think. But so again, as far as 3 SP spells go, it's way up there. The way he can increase the damage on it is significant. In a sense, it might even, I don't want to say it's up there with lightning, but I would have to stop and do the math here. But I feel like it can get up there. 24 to 34. I have to look at it again. I think it was 30 to 40. 35 average damage. This is what, 29? So I don't think this quite gets it there. That 20%, it doesn't, but boy, it gets close, doesn't it? It almost makes it godly, doesn't it? No one thinks about that, but like the casting Wolf Priest is, if you put him in cloth and train all the things, it can be a little bit more dangerous. But I think the Warlock still ultimately wins with the lightning, his increased range with that staff, and his concentration. So, then you get to this little skull thing. Let's see, Wild Pack grants immunity to fear and provokes fear on engaged enemies, reducing melee hit chance and melee resistance. And then fear penalty increases to 20 hit chance and melee resistance. So I don't think this is literally the fear and terror fear. This is like its own unique fear. It almost needs a new name. Now you can correct me if I'm wrong. But it does grant immunity to the fear, but it provokes like the old fear. It almost needs to be like, I don't know, what's a different name for fear and terror? I'm sure there's a synonym. An antonym? A homonym. Synonym? Latin. Provokes pants pissing unengaged enemies. Okay. Reduces your melee hit chance and resistance. I don't think it drops the stats. So I took this for the first time ever on my sisters because I was tired of no one caring about my lack of fear and terror. I still think it was utter shit. I barely got any use out of it. I still think it's a pretty bad spell relative to the rest of the things he can do. I don't know. I think it's just not. You're not going to find much use for it. If anything, it almost gives more chances for Serenity to proc. Yeah, it's its own thing, which I thought it was. Which I don't know. I don't know if those hit chances. Like if someone's going against you, I think they're just going to pass the tests. So you're not really going to get much of the benefits. Like it almost needs to have a better odds of rolling the test, since it's not quite a true fear test. Like maybe you could keep the grants immunity to fear, but instead enemy has 25% less chance of passing test, rolls a test if they fail. Like you want it to like work, right? If I just put the other spell, it just works. What was it? Winter's Chill? I know I'm getting the 15% and the reduced damage. I might get the 20%, but I probably won't. So in that sense, I think it's bad. Plus, it suffers from the self and like I think people, maybe the designers thought this was a good thing. I can't fucking stand the like around the caster spells. It really reduces your range of applying this, and it makes positioning awkward as hell. So, I think it's just not good, and I think you'll be disappointed if you take this in PvE in your results on this. Let's put it that way. Alright, then we get the Blessing of Ulrich. Increases melee critical hit chance and critical damage. Not stackable. Melee critical hit chance increases by 10. Damage by 15. So, where have we seen this spell? Sigmar's Might. Now, this just does damage. That other one does critical damage. So, in theory, Sigmar's Might's a little better. I mean, it is better. It's only 2 OP, and it's also the self around allies. But this gives the Wolf Priest a chance to kind of have a Sigmar's Might. Now, the big difference is he can do this in any warband, particularly a warband with swords. So you could also stack it in the Sisters and gain 20% critical hit chance, 15% critical damage, and 10% melee damage if you put them all on there. Now, you'll have been fireballed by this guy and just absolutely melted or something. But or if you're doing PvE, you get so tired and annoyed of doing that every round. It's just exhausting. But you will get good results with it. I think you can rely on this spell. I think stacking it is fine. I don't use it because of the reasons I just said. I get really tired of reapplying these over and over. I missed a spell somehow. Again, because of the stacking stuff, I think this is its baseline. And that's probably elite. You could almost be godly. I think what holds it back is the AoE around the caster, and that crits aren't that amazing. Like in PvE, I think you're up here. It's great. I think everyone loves it. They'll be like, "Oh, I made this executioner. It was a great build. You guys should all try it." So in PvP, though, people see it coming and they can take counters. So I think it brings it down one notch. It's splitting hairs, to be honest. But it's hard to say it's not a good spell. Like, if you want to crit things, it very much enables them. Again, I think something else that brings it down is this 4 OP and the casting chances. A lot of times you'll fuck this up, and it makes it a little annoying. So you have to do it twice. I skipped over Howl of the Wolf for some reason. Guys, they're a little bit out of order, I guess. So we'll go backwards to Howl of the Wolf. This reduces the cost of charge by 1 offense points. And when another ally is engaged, it increases your melee hit chance and critical So you can start to see the synergies. And then melee hit chance and critical hit chance 10%. Again, this is since vanilla. There's people that have taken Blessing of Ulrich, Howl of the Wolf, and they just love it. They're like, this is the best. You crit the fuck out of everybody. I agree. I think it's fine. I think that's kind of a better version because of the charge reduction and charge increasing damage. And then if you stack it, we've seen the destructive capability of that. I still think it's a one notch up from here because of the reducing the OP to charge. It's basically this spell but better. It's only 3 OP as well, which starts to make it a little better. Where Blessing of Ulrich is 4, you're still getting the critical hit chance and then increased hit chance instead of the critical damage. So I think that makes it for sure better than Blessing of Ulrich. And the more you can stack these, so obviously you can get 30% critical hit chance. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. If you really are an insane person, you can take I can't even imagine. You would take this unit into the Sisters, and Paranoia probably did this. This is probably why he keeps talking about this warband. You take a Matriarch, and you take, let's just say, the basic. Then you take a Purifier and take Mastery. Then you take a basic Wild Pack and Ulrich, and then you take a Mastery, and you can do that and stack 45% critical hit chance. Every fucking 2 turns you'd have to do this. Or you'd have to make it really count, which sounds like my own version of hell. But you could do this, okay? It'd be even better with a sword, probably. So bring a sword unit into the warband where you're doing this, or make it the Wolf Priest himself instead of the stupid Sisters. And you'd have even better results with a great sword or something. And then you could crit some units, and that's very exciting. Or you could just shoot it with a fucking Vital Shot Marksman and have the same result with much less effort. So anyway, you can do this. You can try it. You'll stop playing Mordheim after like the 3rd mission because you'll be tired of doing these buffs all the time. But you can do it. So it's not my cup of tea. I think it's fair to say Blessing of Ulrich is one less than Howl of the Wolf. I think if you're going to have one, you're taking this. And this is more of a luxury. Because the charge thing is better. And the hit chance is better. Now you do have to have another ally engaged. But if you're doing this technique, you're swarming over people anyway. So I don't think it's that hard to get this bonus engaged. And we've seen some of the Mighty Charge builds and how destructive they can be. So I think in that sense, it's one tick better than Blessing of Ulrich. And, you know, I don't want people to be like, yo, you were so, look at him. Everything's up there. I mean, this is elite. They're like one off. Okay? If you want to split hairs, you can move it up there. Okay? They're still really good. Which takes us to the last one, Ice Storm. This is, again, 16 to 24. Paranoia keeps talking about it. I haven't done the math on this. I got it. You haven't done the math. He's going to adjust it. It's much better than vanilla. You got 24, 32. So, yes, it's off by 8 points. It does reduce an offensive point, but I don't think that's enough to make up for it. In vanilla, armor blocked this. So we got rid of that because it was kind of pointless. So now with that gone, at least it's improved its damage. It's just now missing actual damage to matter. I think Mark did this the same way. I saw a little bit of it. But, like, the reason you're casting this is to remove offensive points. And since it lasts for 3 turns, if you have a slot on your team, I agree. I think you're going to take this version, and this one you're just not training. I think it just suffers for all the reasons we talked about. I don't want to pick on anyone, but I think Zito took this during the tournament, and I don't think he had good results. He was their 3rd Sisters warband. You know, I know Sisters are dominant. I got 3rd place or something. Dig was eliminated very early, and Zito, I think, didn't even make it out of eliminations. He had Sisters, and he took a Wolf Priest with this spell, It did no damage. It was not good. If we want to talk about data points, it's very much a data point. His sister's warband and his wolf priest with ice was not doing well. I doubt he had fun with it in PvE also. I think that's a bit cruel. It's not horrendous, but it's not good. I don't think anyone takes Mastery Ice Storm. This used to be how to trigger for the this is how bad the spell was. You would use the basic, remove 1 OP, and you just try to trigger with a lot of armor. I don't know. What is it? Sigil of Sigmar? This is how people were using it. Now that it doesn't get blocked by armor, it hurts you a bit more. You can still kind of do this, though. And it's still kind of the number one use. I think it might be enemies only now, though, too. No, it's still everyone, see? So you can hurt yourself. So if he does buff the damage to like a fireball level, which he's saying he probably will, I think you're just getting to where the fireball was. Where was the fireball? Average. Which is okay to bring it up to average. We could say it's really bad. Maybe I'm being a little cruel to it. It does AoE damage. It's just it's not enough. I'm not going to rank it based off of if he changes it. So, I mean, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise with the Wolf Priest. This is literally what everyone takes. Is every Wolf Priest I've ever made takes these three because I've talked about how much I hate this. But if I wanted to do that, I would also do that. And this is his bread and butter. You can do the Snow King's Decree and have some cute fun with it. Ice Storm's trash. Everyone's known that. But this is much more like the Warlock that you want to see. It's definitely not the sisters. So that leaves us one more. Let's see how he's going to do. Trudging through here. We're at a 2-hour stream. This is kind of amazing. Maybe I should have broke them up for viewers. My YouTube matrix of viewers is just going to be in the trash. Immaculate Flesh. We're back to talking about I start with a 2 OP spell and how good is it relative to other units. Immaculate Flesh removes all active warp effects and increases poison and wordstone resistance by 20%. 2 turns. Removes poison effects as well and increases the resistances. This is a really good spell. There's literally no other spell like this in the game. All effects. Doesn't say 3. Removes all poison, removes all warp effects. There's nothing else that removes warp effects in the game. Guys, I don't know if you're aware of that. I would almost say godly, which is crazy for a basic spell, right? Like, he starts with this. You can't not have it, right? If you are now walking around with a warrior priest, you just made one, he's rank 0. I talked about having to cast this all the time, the wolf priest spells. There's no reason you shouldn't, like, before engagements, just spam this on units. 20% wardstone resistance matters, picking up stone. It's not nothing. 1 out of 5 times you won't take a stone debuff. Oh, my guy just took minus 20% armor resistance. Armor absorption, which is fucking crazy. Minus 3 meters movement, whatever it is. 2 meters. Toss this on him. He's fixed. It's solved. That's fucking amazing. It can't be godly because it doesn't have the other stuff, but like, holy shit, that's pretty close to it. And then if you look at the mastery, there's nothing like it. Again, you remove all the warp effects and you can remove all the poison effects. Now, am I being too like, wow, who really uses poison? In PvE, am I going to use that much? And it starts to be like, yeah, okay. But you still remove all warp effects. The AI can kill you with a poison wind globadier like instantly. And he loves to just chuck his globes everywhere. So I think there is a use for it. Even like considering PvE, it's not that great. But in PvP, you literally hard counter poison. I can't think of a better reason to take it. Like if you know you're facing Skaven, you can hard counter them. Literally the warp lightning too. because that's a wordstone effect. Oh, did you do things? I've just stripped it entirely. This one spell counters an entire warband strategy. If that doesn't count as like godly, I don't know what does. Now, again, that's PvP. Is it that great in PvE? No. But like considering the strength of it and what it does, it's hard not to have it up there. There's nothing else in it in the game, literally. So in that regards, it's godly. Which is how we started our discussion here with the warlock. Like, what does he have? It's like very special, unique things that you can't find anywhere else. Which gets us to the next one. It's only 2 OP. It's Shield of Faith. There's literally no other magic that stacks magic resistance. This is the only one in the game. Everything else is a skill or a consumable. He can cast, for an AoE, 20% magic resistance, half a talisman, which gets back to how fucked up strong talisman are. I think that's been talked about a lot. That should be reduced. This, I hope, is a typo. I think it's supposed to be 3 turns. I'm guessing that's a typo in the builder. It is this annoying self and around the caster, but it is only 2 OP. It's easy to get off, and you're going to want to give kind of large amounts of magic resistance to the team. And 50% itself is also pretty good. So I would say that's good to great. If you're only taking like one, you just have 2 spell points, like that 50% is significant. That's an amulet. Again, for PvE, maybe it brings it down to here. But for PvP, I think it's extremely unique and special. And you better believe you'll see it if you have a wolf priest or warrior priest. Like, the warrior priest is back at the world. He struggles because he has so many good fucking spells that it's hard to like take them all. But reducing your chance to eat magic by 1 out of 5 in a group is like pretty significant. So if you consider also the units in this team, and what they can do, the leader, for example, I think there's going to be changes to this too. He comes with a 20% natural resistance. Sigmar's Aegis. His little friend, everyone loves, comes with 10%. I think he said the Executioner is going to gain some. And then the Templar, in a sense, pretty much has it, because you don't need to wear pendants. You're either taking a helmet or amulets. So you could just put amulets of spell breaking on this guy. So, and then you consider, you know, some of their other passives. They do have the Sigil of Sigmar, which does eventually build up resistance. Or if you just want to go the cold, hard, I don't even want to take any, you can go with the Witchfinder's Ward. So in the Warband use, it's also very good. And then if you drop this guy into like the Mercs, who don't, again, the Mercs are so broken with any other unit, he gives them the magic resistance that they lack. And you put it in the Sisters, they're pretty much immune to magic. So I think it's just a very, very powerful spell. Word of Damnation, this is going to be one that finally isn't good. Reduces magic resistance and the chance to pass Fear, Terror all alone, and then it reduces it by 20%. It's only 2 OP. Relative to the rest of his spell book, though, it's just bad. Part of the problem with the spell now, too, is this has been changed, and it's a better change. But this one reduces melee and ranged hit chance and parry and dodge. This used to be Fear, Terror all alone, and the point was to use Pyre of Righteousness and then Word of Damnation, and then use your, you'll see the Armor of Righteousness and other spells to reduce Fear and Terror. So that doesn't really synergize anymore. So this is kind of living in its own world. And then the second problem is you're casting a debuff on an opponent to reduce their magic resistance. Well, if you're landing the spell, then why do you need to keep landing the spell more? It's like this really weird feedback. So I think these numbers are too small. If this is its only all-alone Fear and Terror, then this needs to be significantly more. And if you're wanting to strip magic resistance, you want to get lucky and really land it and then really not fucking have to worry about it again. So if this was like 50%, I think that's fine. That's significant, don't get me wrong. But then it's functional. Like, damn, I really didn't want that Word of Damnation. I'm going to have to worry about Fear and Terror. I mean, you could still be immune to it, right? There's still counters to counters. And then if I took the risk, you have like a 50% magic resistance unit. I did a couple of them, finally landed it. Now I don't have to fucking worry anymore. And then who is he really synergizing this for? He's only doing it for himself, for his own soul fires. If you're just taking warrior priests, just witch hunters, he's not helping anyone else. Again, ironically, this is something that works in the mercs. This is like a merc spell. Like, oh, now my warlock can cook the fuck out of you even more. Because he brought some sisters in with their Sigmarite Warhammers. He has his concentration. Now he's got Word of Damnation. You know, like the mercs are so horribly broken because they're so strong anyway. And then if you put any other unit in their warband, it's just absolutely cracks the game. So within his own warband, this isn't doing much. Again, if you put them in sisters for their shitty comets, maybe it can help them, but they don't cause any fear and terror. Like the ogre causes problems too, right? So within his own warband, I think it's just bad. It's hard to get excited about it in any way. It's a little better, so it's a little less awful. But in that sense, it could probably still be awful. It's such a standout from the rest of the spells. Like, it's just significantly worse than the rest, just sitting there. And you get the Soulfire. This is an AoE around the caster damage spell. It's one of the weaker ones. There's not many. I would argue that this one is. It's not quite the same, but it's similar enough. So this is 20 to 26. This is 20, so the max is a little higher. So the average is up by 2. It's at 25 versus whatever that would be. 23. But then it gets the debuffs. Or buff. And then you're looking at one other unit. Should have peed in between, like it's my tradition. I would argue again, this is similar. And then we talked about Word of Pain is significantly better. And this has the armor stripping. So I don't know, it's kind of right in the middle. I would say it's not that good compared to the other ones. The other one strips armor. The other one's similar damage but gives a warp effect. But it's unique in them in that it's a AoE spell for them. He struggles the same way. Like, how many of these are you actually going to get off? If you're using this Sigmar Great Weapon, you're just going to die. You have 0 defense. Your only defense would be your armor. And maybe that's enough, considering it's a wolf or a warrior priest. If you go sword and board, like, you're kind of like, well, you're not getting extra casts anyway. You're going to have to do quick casting with this thing. So, and you're not going to really kill anybody. I just got to pee at this point. So I'll be right back. And I know I pee a lot, but I also drink a lot, so whatever. I got my daily bowl of cereal, 3 cups of coffee. What are you going to do? Try out like a raisin the rest of the day. So Soulfire, it's got a niche. It's the only damage spell for this team. But I've faced units. People keep talking about this build as if it's some crazy awesome build. Um, I've faced it and it usually just dies. It comes in, sort of injures your team. It's not going to bypass your magic resistance every time because it's not a warlock. You're going to only have 15% magic bypass. You would argue, but I'm facing the witch hunter, so I'm going to take a lot of pendants and I'm not really going to take amulets. So he shouldn't have to deal with a lot of magic resistance, but you still innately have some. So I think he just struggles to like kill anybody. He just kind of injures people and then he dies himself. And then you've traded a hero for kind of injuring people, and it's a very valuable hero in my opinion. Like when you look at everything else he's going to be bringing to the table, I think throwing him away with the Soulfire is not good. So I think this one, as always, it's just awful. None of these basic spells are going to be good. And then I think it's good. Nothing else in his kit is around me. That's like kind of the other problem, right? His buffs are, but if you're going after enemies, you're going to be in the heat of things, and then it's hard to like get your buffs off. And I think I'm missing one in here. There it is. This is like around the caster, but are your units all going to be in there too? It's only 5 meters. You're trying to catch as many opponents, so there's not a lot of like other synergies going on with his AOE casting here. So I just don't really think it's that good. AOE damage is just not good. It's probably right where the other ones are, which is to say the fireball. The fireball is probably a little better because it's distant. But so many people love this build that it's hard not to. I mean, it functions. You can function in PvE. I think if you run in there, you'll just be disappointed because you die. I think you're better off just swinging a hammer in a lot of cases, to be quite honest. It's better than it was in vanilla. I'll give it that. And you can only get 3 of them off unless you're doing all these tricks. I actually think it is bad. It's not good. You have to do quick casting. You're going to eat a lot of debuffs. You might just stun yourself to actually get a few of these off. You have to swing your hammer first too to try to get Divine Rage to increase your spellcasting chance. So you've swung once, you've used 2 OP, have you even gotten through the stance? Maybe not. And then you gotta like swing again, and then finally you can Soulfire. Yeah, I don't think it's that good. Then you get to Armor of Righteousness. This is basically, well, it is changed from vanilla. He reduces the armor, but then he gave Fear and Terror as well. Basic gives immunity to fear and provokes fear. Armor absorption 5%. And then the Mastery is immune to terror, but it doesn't provoke terror. I thought it provoked terror. Huh. It's been tweaked a few times. I kind of hate where it's going. I think it doesn't need to provoke fear and terror. I think it just could give immunity. Grants immunity to fear, gives armor absorption 5%. Grants immunity to fear and terror, and then 10%. It's all over the place now. And the target armor absorption boost increase, and the target causes and is immune to terror. The wording is just messed up there. That's what it. Armor absorption boost increase at 10% and provokes terror on the target. Immune. You should just reword it the way. Grants immunity to terror, armor absorption increase to 10%, and provokes terror on the target instead of fear. I don't know. So it does. It's very dangerous. You've lost the armor absorption, but it creates a nightmare scenario for the opponent to always have to take pendants against the witch hunters. I mean, it is still a godly tier because of the armor absorption. This is always the king of battle. I've said this in other stuff. That's why I love guard stance, ignore pain. Armor absorption is just the king always. And so this gives 10%. It's not 20% anymore, which it used to be, which was like, wow, it was really a big deal. I still think the 10% is fine, and causing terror and fear on an opponent is still very good, and the immunity is also very good, so your units don't have to worry about it. The awkward part is stacking it. So that's why this one's still like great. Like you're gonna stack it if you have two warrior priests. You're stacking these for 15%, and then the total immunity. So a unit that would benefit from this, and it's the only way to make them function, honestly, is, and I've tried it and it works, is this witch hunter. He has no fucking leadership whatsoever. So you can end up just ignoring that, and then you put the basic and mastery armor of righteousness on him, and then try to avoid an all alone at all costs. But then he can function without worrying about fear and terror. He can use his melee resistance kind of build. He can't take serenity, but he can function in that way. It's good for the zealots. Other units like the Templar don't care. It's in a weird place right now. I hate things that are split. I really do. Like, it's a lot harder on players to think, oh, he cast basic, so that's fear. Am I immune to fear or am I immune to terror? I can't remember. I used Howl of the Wolf, so I am immune, or whatever the fuck. I'm immune to fear, but not terror. I used wild. You know, it's hard to like keep it all straight. Swapping between the two, like, oh, he used mastery. Now it's terror I care about, not fear. Another spell would be Hearts of Griffin, right? I know it's trash. We've talked about it, but these things exist currently in the game. So this one's only immune to fear, and the other one's immune to fear. And then even if you're facing the witch hunters themselves, right? Did I use basic on that guy and then he used basic, or did he use mastery and I used mastery? It like starts to become very confusing of what the fuck I'm immune to and what's going to be caused to me. So, and then you talk about like ogres, like one, I don't know, one causes fear and one causes terror. I can't even remember what causes what. I think the Crypt Horror is terror. Rat Ogre is fear. The Possessed is fear, I want to say. So if you put Mastery Armor of Righteousness to face a Rat Ogre, you're not going to pass it because it's not immune to fear. So if you're facing a Rat Ogre, you have to take only basic, or have someone with basic, and then also put Mastery. And it starts to get hella confusing. He causes fear. The Vampire's terror. The Thrall is fear. So I guess you kind of see where I'm getting at. The Chaos Spawn is terror. The Ogre, though, is randomly fear, even though other, so two of the impressives cause fear, two of them cause terror. You better memorize it. And then the spells, you better start memorizing it, and you better make sure you know which one's on there. I kind of hate that part of it. I don't know. It gets very confusing, and I feel bad for players having to try to remember all that. Then you get the Prayer of Absolution, and this used to be like a tier lower than Armor of Righteousness in vanilla because the amounts were less, but it was good. But now that they're exactly the same, Prayer of Absolution's almost the same as or better than Armor of Righteousness, because now the stuff we just talked about, if you just are like, fuck it and take pendants and don't have to worry about it, then who cares about that fear and terror stuff? You're only causing serenity in PvP against yourself. So just take Prayer of Absolution and get all the armor in a group setting and not have to worry about all that other trash. So I think it's very good, and it's going to function very much the same way, I would say. You're doing this to stack them. I think you use them right. We talked about this. Am I going to use basic right out the gate? Yeah, why not? 5%. And then this has the dodge and parry too. Let's not forget that, actually, which makes it probably better than Armor of Righteousness at this point, to be quite honest. I think our Prayer of Absolution's surpassed it, which is crazy to say. In vanilla, it's like such a big spell because it's 10 and 20, and it lasts 1 and 2 turns in vanilla, which is a big thing in that. And then you get to the 2/4 OP spells, which are also very good for this warband. Deny the Heretic, create a zone of effect. And he's entering or starting to receive a debuff that reduces current maximum by 1. So if you keep like walking through the cloud, you keep stripping off your OP, by the way. So once you're in the cloud, don't leave it and go back in. I'll see this a lot in PvP. And then it's only 5% for melee hit chance, and it lasts 2 turns. And then the other one's 15%, and it lasts for 3 turns. This was moved from 3 OP to 4 OP as it should have been. It's spammed all over. It's still godly. This is still kind of like falling into this pattern, I would want to say. I would say it's a little lower. That 5% is a big deal. It still removes 1 OP and 1 OP though, right? And if you throw in an Ice Storm, I think there's some neat tricks you can do with it. But it starts to become that this is a bit tedious. You know, like that 5% kind of isn't worth it. That 1 extra OP, we've talked about this with other skills. You either want to move like 1 OP or 3 OP. When you get to that weird 2, it's not that beneficial a lot of times. You don't necessarily remove a full other OP or attack from coming in because of ways you can get around that. So I think that extra OP reduction is not that big a deal. I mean, it does matter, but so an impressive. You have 9 OP. You remove 1 OP, it's at 8. It can attack 4 times. You remove to 7, it add rushes and still just attacks again. It's like it's at 8. So that's what I'm talking about. For a dual wield great weapon user, it is a bit more harsh, but and that's the case where it would work. Single-handed weapons, though, you're back at that impressive example. So I don't know if it's as much worth taking the basic. I think if you've trained it, you throw it out there. So that's why it's up there higher. On your way to mastery. And then healing hands. Like, 200 is significant. This is the highest heal in the game for the AoE ones. Like, healing circle was 200. The globe, mastery globe is 200. This is the basic. Again, nothing touches the broken idol of blood, which we'll get to in destruction magic. But sometimes you can't get 2 units, or who even gives a shit if you heal 2 of them with your healing circle? You're just using it. In my case, the example I gave, I healed the augur for 200 just because I needed the augur healed. So if you can have this for a basic and get the same result, I think that's really good. The one drawback is the range is so short. I think if you just have 2 spell points, like, this is an easy choice. And I think the mastery, especially in PvE and then PvP, this can be just literally save a unit, and you're not eating injuries and whatnot. I think it's a really good spell. I mean, so I've put everything in the warrior priest is just like the warlock, and that makes sense. It's got 2 kind of stinkers in there, but it's still in a great way compared to, especially to the sisters. And then the wolf priest is right there too. Again, we were splitting hairs. So I think if you look at like all the other, and everyone's going to be like, oh, recency bias. It's like, no, like, I think the sisters have so many fucking not good spells compared to their brethren, literally, because they're sisters and those are dudes. And it's a shame because I think most of the spells should be living up top here. And because what holds a spell back? What holds a spell back is the units that can cast them. Curses. You're going to take curses if you just keep spamming them. Casting chance. Right? And then resistances. Buffs are a little different, but... And so this could be kind of your argument for sisters. Well, you can take 4 casters on a sisters team where all these other ones you can only have 2 of. And I think that's a fair point. I think that is part of what you have to balance. But if you consider the maiden isn't that much of a caster, for starters, she really just wants to hit things. You really kind of only have 3 casters. So you have the matriarch and 2 purifiers. So is 1 extra caster that big a deal to have a bunch of shitty spells? I don't think so. And then you could also just bring other casters. So they can have the warlock and the wolf priest or the warrior. You know what I mean? You can bring in other casters with their unique spell books. So all the warbands could have like basically a bunch of casters, right? Is the point. just like sisters can. Um, and then having a variety of spells, I would say, is stronger than just having one spell book, which the sisters have. So if you're saying they get 3 casters where everyone else could only get 2 unique casters, if you're just locked, or say you cannot bring the wolf priest, he's special. They only get this priest, they only get the warlock, you only get the pure. Your spells have to be a little weaker. I think it's overly weak. It's too weak because everything else is balanced around. The sisters have 0 ranged. They have horrible weapons. So the comets, I think, need to be stronger to compete. You can only do so many second winds now, even. The Divine Revelation, the AI sucks with ranged. This is only up here because of PvE, to be quite honest. And then that bit of melee resistance. This is to just save PvE players, just like the Healing Hands was. So there are other spells that need to perform. Sinful Speech, terrible. Athleticism, pretty terrible. Sigmar's Might, pretty terrible. I think they're in a bad way. When you think about the builds and what they can do and what they can bring to the team. So Paranoia says generally one wants the default spell to be the caster wants the least. Magister starts with a strong spell. I don't know if I agree with that statement, because you just literally gave an example of one that's not. Sorcerer's Curse is perfectly great. I mean, it's mastery knee shot. You want that. It's a god tier for me and Mork. I don't know why you wouldn't want that. For easy to train, even the basic works fine. Blessing of Athleticism, nobody wants that. That's true. Sinful Speech, nobody wants that. Sigmar's Might, it's okay. It's good, I would say, and awful. What is that? He wants that. That's really good. The increased hit chance. That's really good. He wants that. There's no problem with that. Well, we just talked about Flesh. That's good. I don't think your principle applies here. We'll look at the other units, but Wither is totally fine. Weapons of Destruction is fine. Boon of Ruin, I would say, is not good. And then the Necromancer one, Rotten Touch, is totally fine. So there's only 2 units that have spells they don't love. Boon of Ruin on Doomweaver, and then Blessing of Athleticism, Sinful Speech on Sisters. And again, I argued why Sigmar's Might's bad. Why it's not synergistic. Maybe not bad isn't the right term, but why it doesn't function as well as it could function. And it's because of their weapons. So Sigmar's Might, you could argue, let's keep the crits fine, I get it. They only get Sigmarite Warhammers. I don't want them to be able to have massive crit chances, even though other warbands can get massive crit chances. They can get the Wolf Priest, which breaks them a bit. You could argue all of that. And then I would say I think it needs something, though. I think I said more melee damage. Like, that can be 30%. 20 and 40%, make up for their lack of horrible weapons. Since they're not truly getting much benefit from the critical hit chance, let them get actual melee damage. Why does it have to be an anemic 3? 3 more damage from your Sigmarite Warhammer. Again, I don't think this has to be so horribly. They're getting 0 benefit from the parry. You're not bypassing anything with 15%. You're not. You have 0 parry bypass weapons. You're gaining 15% parry chance bypass, which is nothing. Nothing. You're going to have really high strength. You're going to have to take other skills to make it even work, like strong blow. And then, what is the point then? And you're still not going to have the same result of someone just using a spear. The dodge bypass was something, but again, you don't have a spear. So this just needs to be higher numbers to get it to actually function better. If you're telling me it's the athletics, then I don't know what to tell you. And then we talked about Sinful Speech. She wants to start with Blessing of Athleticism. I'd say give that to the purifier, but that's even fucking more pointless. She should have comets again. Like it isn't vanilla. It goes Sigmar's Might, comets, and then I think she does start with sinful speech. But you can go, Sigmar's Might, comet, blessing of athleticism. I think you're fixing the warband. You're fixing the problems that this warband has. Um, but yeah, this just really struggles. If you did the removes order, we talked about if it removes order and insult and all that, then I think you're fixing the problems that this warband, in my opinion, clearly has right now. Um, but that's the takeaway looking at these tier trees. I mean, I know Mork only did 2 of them. He keeps telling me how to play sisters. I don't think I've ever seen him play sisters. And I don't think he's done the rankings yet. So I'll be curious to see where he thinks it's really strong that I'm missing somehow. Or if anyone else would like to come in here and tell me what I'm missing. If you look at this compared to also their previous lists I made with their unique warband skills, those were not in a good way either. So when 1 plus 1 equals 2, I think you can look at this warband again and try to balance them better. I certainly made fun of a few of the Wolf Priest uniques, but that's fine. And I think the Witch Hunters, I certainly shit on some of their actives. I think they had terrible actives. But the Warrior Priest makes up for a lot. So, it's been a long stream. We're kind of winding down here. I think we will look at then the units themselves and how to plug them in to make the final ultimate like rankings and thinking about where these warbands fit. Could you imagine the last tier ranking video where we just have 6 warbands? We could just put Mercs up here. You could put the Skaven up there, Undead. You could put like the Cult here. And then you could put like Witch Hunters and then Sisters. And just be done. I definitely need a break. I didn't know this would be so long. I want to do the destruction ones probably after this. Maybe I'll get a little snack. I have nothing else to do today. And why not? It's tough on the voice. 2.5 hours. You guys can post on the Discord and tell me how wrong I was and what I'm missing. I know I've hammered the sisters a lot. It's fine. You can talk about, yeah, you're right. These are all fucking amazing spells. And we can all talk about how that's true. Or, boy, I really messed up Soulfire again. Don't you get AoE spells around the caster where it's at? I don't know how you don't understand that. And, Damnation. What are you talking about? We can talk about them. I'm happy to talk about why I thought those were so bad. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys maybe later today or on the flip side, and have a nice spring so far. I know I am.